How's it going, everybody? Hello and welcome back to Our Man Reviews. My name is Russell, and today I got another book review video for you. And that is of The Dead Lifeguard. So The Dead Lifeguard is, I believe, the 6th book, I'm pretty sure, in the Fear Street Super Chiller series. Spin-off YA horror, thriller, slasher, stalker, whatever you want to call it. Series, obviously by Stine, of course. And oh my word, do we have to talk about The Dead Lifeguard today. So let's talk about it as best I can without spoilers. So, in The Dead Lifeguard, basically you have this girl named Lindsay, and then you have this whole other cast of characters. They're really lifeguards, supposed lifeguards in this book. I don't think I can name them out all without cheating, but but I'll try my best. So you have Lindsay, you have Mayanne, you have Danny, you have Spencer, you have Pete, you have Pug, you have Cassie, and that's really all the names of the lifeguards in this book that I could think of right now. I think there was a couple that I missed. But this book was actually pretty good. It, fortunately, still wasn't, or still isn't, my favorite Fear Street book that I've read. Out of all the ones I've read so far, that still has to go to The Dare. But this one, it was still pretty good for what it was. It was definitely not a perfect book, but I liked it. So yeah, you have Lindsay, you have all those other lifeguards, and then, you know, they're working at the North Beach County Club at a pool as lifeguards. I think it's located north of Shady Side, Fear Street, because it says North Beach Country Club on the back, so that's my guess. Yeah, there's like a couple of very brief Fear Street mentions in this book, and I just finished reading this book like 5-10 minutes ago. Yeah. I think one of the things that I really just kind of disliked the most about this book was the humongous cast of characters. I think this Fear Street book so far had the most characters in it ever than any other in any other Fear Street book that I've read so far. But also Broken Hearts, the other Super Chiller book, had a lot of characters too. Which I will admit, I do sometimes favor or praise lots of characters in books, mostly because they make out good suspects. In total combined, which, yeah, I like that about this book. You have all these characters, and then you're just trying to guess, like, oh, really, like, which one is the actual killer? Which one is doing all this stuff? Which I liked. But I just, yeah, I thought there's too much characters in this book. Way too many. It really overloaded my brain. Kind of overstimulated me a little bit. And that's mostly, yeah, just the thing I don't like in most books, considering in any of these YA books. And then, obviously, scary, gruesome things, deaths, if you want to call it, start to happen immediately in this book. Now, I will also note that this book took me, I think, less than a week or so to read. It just, mostly because of the beginning part of this book. I hated the beginning setup part of this book, but I did like the atmosphere to it, where you kind of had this rainy, stormy night right outside of the club building thing taking place, like, at the pool. Yeah, I like the pool setting in this book. It didn't have the best atmosphere, but it was alright. There are a couple of big scenes in this book that I think the atmosphere just worked really well on, in my opinion. So yeah, weird things start to happen right after the beginning scene part that just took way too long to set up the characters, probably because there was just so many, which made sense. This book may have took at least 20 to 30 pages just to set up all of its characters, tell you about all of them in the beginning part. Which, yeah, I can understand that, but I could not stand that at all. And because of that, I just started to think, like, oh no, is that all this book's gonna be like? Is just boring and dragged out like the beginning part? But no, apparently not, because I decided to give it a try. I was about ready to just give up and just stop reading this book, like, for good. But I gave it a try, one last try, and just plowed through most of this book. I think it was a little bit, well, mostly yesterday, but a little bit today. Just barely before I recorded this video. Yeah, I just plowed through it mostly yesterday, and that's when the book really started to, get faster, get faster paced and all that stuff, and started to get more intense, suspenseful, and all that stuff, which is what I liked. So this Fear Street book has a body count, technically, of 2, I'm pretty sure. That's not a spoil, I hope. Which is not the highest body count in a Fear Street book. I'm still going to have to give that to Broken Hearts. But there were also a couple of deaths that, I don't know how to explain this without spoiling. They weren't, like, actually mentioned in the book itself. Hopefully that wasn't a spoil. I don't think it was. Yeah, and then after that, obviously the police show up to investigate right after the 2 characters, 2 of them at least, are murdered. And then things just start getting wilder and wilder and crazier and crazier. Now there is kind of a bit more, what do I try to say here? Let me back up. This book kind of supposedly leans into a bit more of supernatural elements. But then this book takes a couple of wild turns on those elements that I'm not going to spoil, which has really got to me too. There were some big twists in this book that also really got to me, that really shocked me, that just left me thinking, I cannot talk today, left me sitting there for a minute, just like thinking, oh wow, what a good twist ending, or not twist ending, what a good twist, Stine. I think that was very well done, and very well written out by you. And then there's this great climactic scene and all that stuff. Yeah, the plot was, I will say the plot was very predictable, but then it totally went a different way. It was going one way that was very predictable to me, but then it just totally flipped the premise and just went a totally different way, down a totally different road. Which is not common in at least any of the other Fear Street books that I've read so far. Yeah, that aspect was pretty nice for me. Yeah. So, yeah. The rest of the plot, kind of after like a big chunk of it that felt really predictable, but then the other chunk of the plot just started to feel really unpredictable, leading up to the twist. What am I trying to say here? I'm just gonna say, like, the other, like, big plot piece, chunk, whatever of this book, near the twist, the twist was actually pretty good, I guess you could say. But there was also kind of like some identity mishaps in this book too, over a couple of the characters, which I'm not going to spoil again, of course. Which, yeah, I like that too. Yeah, this book, it was honestly not really scary. There were a couple of kind of big, I want to call it like big, kind of intense focus scenes in this book that really got to me, especially a couple of murders. This book wasn't very gory either. It's just your good old standard Fear Street book, you know, but a bit better. That's really all I have to say about The Dead Lifeguard. I did my best to try to go through it all without spoiling. Yeah, my cover, or should I say, my copy here of this book is in very fantastic condition. I got this book with a couple of other books, Fear Street books, Super Children's books, in a lot off of eBay a little while ago. And this book came in the best condition over the other two. As you can see, the pages are kind of a bit rumpled, but they look really nice. They're not too brown or anything like that. You can see there's a little bit of damage kind of on the top cover there. I love this cover here. Probably one of my favorites of all Fear Street. Kind of, you got those sexy, you want to call it that sexy 90s vibe, whatever you want to call it, cover art. Where you have the supposed dead lifeguard here on the cover art in a blue one-piece 90s bikini, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it that. Not whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it that. Being held by this other lifeguard, which I don't think this scene was mentioned in the book. I don't ever remember a scene being mentioned in this book of this dude carrying this dead lifeguard. Yeah, I mean, it could be a bit of a lie, but the dead lifeguard, she's not a lie in this book at all. Yeah, I love the background too. Not really the sky so much, but you have a couple of kind of surprise people right there, kind of on the pool deck. It always looked like a boat to me, kind of in the background. But no, this book takes place at a pool, not the beach, not the ocean. And I thought this was going to take place at the ocean, but no, it's not very water themed. Also, I will note that it didn't really feel that much water themed, which it kind of disappointed me just a little bit, honestly. But everything else about this book was just good. Back cover looks pretty good. This book is a first edition, but it's a second printing. Yep, original 1990, it's a 1994 second printing, but it's a first edition, I'm pretty sure. It doesn't have the shiny Stine lettering, and it's not raised either. But it's still a second printing according to the inside page, copyright page here. You can see the number line right there. You can see second printing. And then 1994, where is it? Yeah, right there. Yeah, Archway paperback printing. Yeah, so anyways, guys, that's gonna wrap up this book review of this book for you guys today. If I had to rate this book out of 5 stars, I give it a bit of a below average, 2 out of 5 stars. I mentioned it numerous times before. Any book that I rank 2 out of 5 stars just means it's ranked a bit below average, but it's still really good, just not quite a mid-tier book for me. It's just, yeah, it faced some criticisms by me, but it's still a pretty good book to read. I would recommend it, just not like a ton. Like, don't expect like coming into reading this book for it to be like an awesome top tier favorite book. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Comment down below, subscribe down below, and I'll see you again in my next videos. Take care.